Here's your smart fact of the day. So recently I was actually studying, or I am studying, in the process of studying French from a free YouTube channel called Learning French with Alexa. No, it's not Alexa from Amazon. Alexa is a lady who teaches French really well for non-French speaking people. Now, I was wondering whether she is fantastic at what she does because she knows a lot of good French, or whether she can speak in English to non-French speaking people in order for them to understand what she's talking about. What's her real skill? So in today's episode of Smarter With Sid, what we're going to try and figure out is about this second skill, and how important it is and what we can do to maybe get it in our lives, and is it required? Let's go. So let's be very clear about what I mean by the second skill. It means that you already have a primary skill. Now, it might be a software developer, or somebody who's a designer, or somebody who's damn good at business, or somebody who's good at sales and marketing, or somebody who's good at, whatever you do. So that's your primary skill. And then you, on top of that, have a secondary skill, which is sometimes completely unconnected to your primary skill, or sometimes deeply connected to your primary skill. So an example of this would be a doctor who's a very talented, let's say laparoscopic surgeon, who also has a secondary skill. He or she has a great bedside manner, so she can comfort patients really well. Okay, so that's a secondary skill. Another example of a secondary skill, you ask me? Okay, so how about somebody like Richard Branson, who is, such a fantastic entrepreneur, somebody who can set companies up, somebody who can, just do so many businessy things. But on top of that, he is fantastic in building his personal brand. And well, that's a secondary skill of note. Of course, it is deeply connected to his primary skill. Now, you might have a secondary skill or a second skill which may have nothing to do with your primary skill. Like, for example, your second skill, even though you're a software developer, might be you know how to play the piano. So that's when maybe things cannot be connected between your primary skill and secondary skill, but we'll see about that as we go along this episode. So I hope that I've set the context right, because on Smarter With Sid, we set the context first, then we go to maybe the first principles around second skills. That sounds really funny, so I'm going to say it again: first principles around second skills. And then we perhaps look at the applicability of a second skill in your life. So let's go towards actually understanding first principles, shall we? Now that we've set the context of what a second skill is. I think the best way to do it would be with an example. When I was acting as the COO of a software development company, I used to be so frustrated with developers or coders, right, who used to actually just consider that writing out lines of code and that work perfectly when they test it out on their own machines was the end of their job. But then there was a coder, and I'm not going to name that coder, who actually said, okay, my job does not end here. My job is when I see whether that piece of code is working with other pieces of code, and whether it goes beyond the, just the unit testing, and it can go towards, working really well with other, developers as well. And so therefore he started testing things out. And then I wanted to find out why this person is different. And I realized that the reason why this person is different is because he's analytical. And it turned out that his secondary skill was analytics or analysis. And over a period of time, I've seen this guy develop both of these skills, being a software developer, but being a business analyst. And therefore, today he commands a premium in the market because he's somebody who's a business analyst who happens to know software coding really well. Now, in this case, in fact, his second skill became his first skill, and his first skill has become his second skill. He's kind of turned it around. But it goes to show how important this actual developing the second skill can be. Now, I did speak about the guy, the software developer, or let's say you're a designer, forget about software developers for a while. Let's say you're a designer, or let's say you're a teacher, but who you can play the piano. Now, how can these two things be connected? Now, I have seen somebody who has connected this really well. At an event at Micah a few years back, I came across a professor who raps in his class. Yeah, seriously, no jokes. And it's not mumble rap, guys. It was genuine rap. And he came and performed in an event at Micah, and I realized that here's another instance of a guy developing a second skill which seemingly is unrelated to his primary skill. Now, his primary skill was teaching, his primary skill was education, and his secondary skill was rapping. Now he combined it and made his classes more interactive and fun. So it's not necessary that, you can't find a connect between your second skill and your primary skill. In fact, I would urge all of you to see whether A, you have a second skill, B, do you have an interest in developing a second skill, and C, whether you can connect the first skill with the second skill. In fact, the creator of Dilbert, Scott Adams, has kind of really nailed it when he says that, look, he was not the world's best illustrator as a cartoonist. He's the creator of Dilbert. So if you notice his drawings, they're kind of basic, aren't they? Catbert and, all of those characters, they're kind of basic. They're like line drawings. He was not really as good as, say, Bill Watterson, who was fantastic in his illustrations, the creator of Calvin and Hobbes, Bill Watterson. So if I look at how Dilbert has been progressing, this guy Scott Adams knew management, so primary skill, second cartoonist, okay, third he was able to actually be irreverent because he was a freelancer, and he combined all of these. He stacked a lot of these skills. He's kind of listed 6 or 7 to be honest, and he stacked all of these and said, okay, I may not be the world's best illustrator or the best joke writer or the best management expert or whatever, but I don't think anybody has a combination like that. And so he used that stacked up set of skills to actually manage this. Now, he goes well and beyond what I'm calling a second skill, but to be honest, if I've seen a lot of people, they don't go beyond their primary skills. So my recommendation would be to identify at least a second skill, if not a third skill or a fourth skill. Don't stay just with your primary skill. This is where I come to the applicability of the situation. You might find unrelated ones. Try to figure out how you can relate them. Try and get a friend or a family member to see how you can relate them together. Because in today's day and age, we need differentiation. We need a competitive advantage, and this competitive advantage is never going to come from our primary skill. It is going to come from our second skill, or maybe even a stacked set of skill, as Mr. Scott Adams says. So I would recommend building second skills in order for you to actually have some kind of leverage in the marketplace, because primary skills are basically hygiene factors. So now if I have to kind of use the same parameters for myself, I would say, yeah, sure, I'm a professor who knows digital, but I'm also somebody who comes from a marketing and communications background, so I probably understand media and brand much better than other digital marketing people do, because they're focused more on performance and the rest of it. Then I would say, okay, in addition to that, what is my third skill? My third skill would be, hey, I'm a creator myself. I do this podcast, so I understand it from the creator economy perspective. What is my fourth skill? Okay, I have a sense of humor and I have the ability to engage with an audience online as well as offline. So some stand-up comedian skills. Now, if I look at doing a stack up of these skills, I'm sure that perhaps forms my competitive advantage. What is your competitive advantage, and how are you utilizing your second skill, or how are you developing your second skill? I hope you liked this particular episode of Smarter with Sid. Many more to come from where this one came from. And hey, if you're like me, if you like this episode, do like and subscribe to my podcast. And if you like and subscribe to my podcast, why not follow me on LinkedIn or on Instagram or on both? I'm the traveling professor over there, so do look me up. And if you like podcasts like these, IVM's got a really good amount of fantastic stuff waiting for you. So do check them out. Until next time then, ciao.